Hello and welcome back to FatbossTV. In today's guide we're covering the Freehold dungeon on Mythic. This guide will give you all the information to clear the instance easily on Mythic 0, but it translates well into higher Mythic Plus keys. There's a fair amount to go over, so let's begin. As you path along the cliff and clear out the trash towards the first boss, avoid standing in the parrot poop coming from the sky. It slows you and deals ticking damage. While fighting enforcers, watch out for their frontal cone brutal backhand cast. If you're hit by this will knock you back. You can easily sidestep the ability as it's cast. Enforcers will also cast Shattering Toss on the tank. This cast throws the tank far away from the group and it will drop threat on the tank, so make sure you're quick to taunt them back. You want to make sure you soothe the Mastiffs when they enrage, as the tank will struggle with the extra damage they deal. Corsairs will apply a stacking poisoning strike dot on the tank. Land stuns on them to prevent the stack from going too high or dispel the dot if possible. Crack shots will mark the location of a random player and throw an Azerite grenade. This grenade will deal damage to all players within the landing location, so make sure you move away from the red zone. Bone saws will hit the tank with Filthy Blade, dealing damage and applying a stacking healing reduction disease. Dispel it if you can, and if not, you'll just have to be careful not to pull too many of these at once. When the Bone saws cast Healing Balm on another mob, make sure you interrupt it. If this cast goes through, the hot can be removed by purging it. After clearing along the cliff, you'll come to Skycap'n Kragg. When Kragg casts Charge, make sure you move from the targeting zone. If you're hit by it, you'll take some damage and be knocked back. Aside from that, he'll also hit random players with Pistol Shot. This damage is completely unavoidable. Now at 75% health, he would dismount Sharkbait and begin to engage players on foot. Sharkbait will now take to the air and continue to drop the shit patches that you dodged while clearing the trash. Sharkbait will also dive bomb the group, landing briefly and then charge in a line in the direction he's facing. This will damage you and also knock you back. You need to keep an eye on him when he lands and make sure that he's not facing towards you. From this point, Kragg will no longer charge or use his pistol shot, but instead will cast a cone of Azerite powder shot. Spread around the boss the best you can just to avoid this large cone. The captain will also channel Revitalizing Brew. Make sure you interrupt this cast, otherwise he's going to heal himself for a shit ton. When you do interrupt him, he'll drop his brew on the ground, which a nearby player can actually pick up, which will heal them instead. After defeating Skycap'n Kragg, move across the rope bridge towards the town. Now when fighting brutes, they'll be dealing damage and slowing players near to them when they cast Earthshaker. Just note that this slow can make dodging other trash abilities difficult. The Duelist will mark the location of a random player and begin to cast Duelist Dash. After 2 seconds, they'll charge to that location, dealing damage and stunning all players caught in the charge. Just make sure you're not caught. Oarsmen will cause zones to appear underneath each player if their Sea Spout cast goes uninterrupted. These detonate and send you high into the air if caught. Vermin Trappers will throw out rat traps at the location of each player in the group. After a second, the trap will become active, dealing ticking damage and rooting any player who triggers it for 5 seconds, so make sure you move from them fast. Vermin Trappers are usually accompanied by a bunch of soggy ship rats. These rats apply a stacking healing received reduction debuff that lasts 8 seconds on the tank. Focus these first to prevent the tank from becoming unhealable. Whilst you're fighting the knife jugglers, you'll want to be spread out. The ricocheting throw cast deals a burst of damage that will jump to players within 8 yards of each other. Now before entering the courtyard and beginning the boss, you want to join a pirate crew. This is done by one of 3 events that can be found during the trash. The event changes on a weekly basis. By joining the pirates, you'll reduce the damage and health pool of the next bosses by 100%, so it's very important that you do this. If you spot the pug Murphy, chase him down to get the keys around his neck. Murphy will go through several different spots, most of which reside in a clump of trash. Make sure you finish one trash pack before pulling the next. Eventually, Murphy will get all tuckered out and fall asleep. At this point, someone must right click him to take his keys. You can then open the cage holding some dude. He'll make you an honorary member of his crew, making Captain Jolly an ally to the party. If you spot several Volperas that are highlighted, the entire group must speak to one of them. This will get you drunk for 1 minute, and after your drink you'll become members of that crew, making Captain Eudora an ally to the party. If you spot 2 highlighted knuckle dusters attacking a target dummy, engage them in combat to begin a brawl. At this point, 4 additional enemies will run towards the group. Once all 6 have been defeated, the group will become honorary members of Captain Raoul's crew, making him an ally in the next encounter. During this brawl event, you'll be fighting knuckle dusters and scrappers. When fighting the knuckle dusters, make sure you interrupt the shattering blow cast or stop casting before the cast finishes, otherwise it will lock you out. Scrappers will fixate random players with blind rage, either kite them or soothe the enrage effect to stop the fixate. After joining a crew and clearing the trash, you should then go engage the boss. Now each boss has 2 abilities that they'll cast when fighting against the party, and 1 passive that they'll gain if they're fighting for the party. Throughout the fight, brews will be thrown from a bartender at the side. The bosses or a player will drink them if they're within the targeting zone. Confidence boosting and invigorating brews you should pick up immediately, as they'll buff you with crit chance or haste respectively. Caustic brews will however apply a dot, so you'll want to make sure that the bosses are within these landing zones if possible when that is cast. You want to put the bartender on focus so you can see exactly what brew is being cast. Captain Raoul will cast Blackout Barrel on a random non-tank player. This player will be disoriented, so DPS need to quickly swap to them so they can rejoin the fight. When Barrel Smash is cast, move away from the zone around Raoul. This hurts and knocks you back. Captain Eudora spam casts Powder Shot at random players. This damage is unavoidable. When she casts Grape Shot, try to move from her cones. She will always cast this series of cones from her left to her right hand side. Keep this in mind whilst dodging them. Watch out for Captain Jolly's Cutting Surge Charge on random players. If you're hit by this, you'll gain a dot. Also be careful for his swords when he casts Whirlpool of Blades. You want to keep Captain Jolly still to allow the blade to return to him as soon as possible. It will despawn as soon as it contacts him. If Captain Raoul is your ally, he will buff you with a 15% damage increase. You need to make sure you stand near him when he casts Tapped Keg to gain this buff. Captain Eudora will help you just by randomly stunning the pirates for 6 seconds, and Jolly will give you a large movement speed increase for 10 seconds, which is actually very useful when it comes down to dodging Eudora's Grape Shot cones. After defeating the council, continue along the path towards the Ring of Booty. Harpooners will cast Dragging Harpoon at random players, prioritizing range players first, dealing damage and dragging the target towards the location of the harpooner. Be careful for what awaits you after you've been dragged in, such as the Irontide Crusher's Ground Shatter AoE. This deals large damage and knocks you back. Crushers will also cast Boulder Throw at a random player. If you do not move from the landing zone, you'll take damage and be stunned. Once you've finally made it to the Ring of Booty, you'll have to do the 3-phase event. Each phase is separated by lengthy RP, giving you time to prepare for each. In the first phase, you'll have to catch the Pig Lightning. The group needs to right click on Lightning a total of 5 times to pick him up, and this is kind of difficult because this guy's pretty fast. You can, however, all surround the center point marked by a bone-like texture and spam right click. This will cause all 5 of you to interact immediately, making this phase far shorter. In phase 2, you'll have to defeat Ludwig. Watch out for his shells. They'll bounce all over the encounter area, dealing damage and knocking back anyone in their path. This becomes increasingly difficult as more and more will spawn over time. For phase 3, you must defeat Trothak. Trothak will hit a random player in melee and apply a dot via his Ripper Punch ability. This is completely unavoidable. Players with a melee range do however need to watch out for his Shark Tornado channel. This Blade Storm hurts a shitload. Also to watch out for is his Shark when he tosses it towards someone. As the shark lands, it will deal damage to anyone within 8 yards, and then will begin to chase the nearest player. Each time it bounces, it will do damage nearby. Range players should kite the shark around away from the rest of the group. The boss will rearm the shark soon after. Whilst kiting him, make sure you use the chum patches. These will help by slowing the sharks by 50%. After you've killed him off, backtrack and cross the rope bridge that heads north. Make sure you clear all trash in this area before engaging the last boss. Officers will cast Oiled Blade on the tank, dealing a large burst of damage and applying a magic debuff which reduces all healing taken. Healers must be quick to dispel this. When fighting Ravagers, watch out for their long cast, Painful Motivation. This cast will buff all nearby mobs, increasing their damage done by 45%, but it will also cause them to take a shit ton of ticking damage. On low keys, it's probably worth letting this go through, especially if your tank is confident. However, on higher keys, you'll either want to kick it or have your tank kite until the buff drops. Watch out for the Thundering Squall channel from the Stormcallers, and you want to interrupt this cast over the lightning bolts, as the zone they place around them deals substantial damage. Make sure you avoid the frontal cone from the Buccaneers when they channel Blade Barrage. They do remain still as it's cast, so it is pretty easy to sidestep. Once this entire area is clear, you can go ahead and engage the last boss. When Harlan casts Cannon Barrage on you, make sure you constantly move over the duration of the debuff and attempt to spawn the zones away from the group. These patches last for a long time and deal ticking damage to anyone who stands within them. When the boss casts Swiftwind Saber, quickly identify what direction the 3 blades are facing. They'll fire out in straight lines, dealing damage and knocking you back. Sidestep them to avoid being hit. As a rule, never have the Cannon Barrage patches behind you. That way, if you do fuck up and you're knocked back by the blades, you won't be knocked into a patch. Now throughout the fight, Grenadiers will spawn near the piles of gold and fixate on a random player. If they reach that player, they will explode, killing themselves and dealing large damage to you. Swap to them immediately and use stuns, slows and displacements to keep them away. From 60% health onwards, Cannon Barrage will now be applied to all non-tank players. Make sure you don't cut off each other as you drop the patches. Additionally, Swiftwind Saber will now spawn 4 sets of 3 wind blades, each of which will be targeted in different directions. As these sets spawn within a short time of one another, dodging this ability can be incredibly difficult. Make sure you use the never have a flame patch behind you rule and you should be fine. On top of this, to make everything worse, multiple grenadiers will spawn at once rather than just a single ad. Just continue to focus them down just like you did the previous ones. At 30% health, Harlan gains 100% attack speed increase and his abilities will cast more frequently, but he'll be taking 100% extra damage. You want to be saving tank, healer, and DPS cooldowns for this part of the encounter. This is especially important for high level keystones. Once he's dead, the instance is over, and that wraps up Freehold. Thank you for watching this guide, but if you're looking for more information on the dungeon with more detailed descriptions on the trash, as well as all the bosses, then do go check out our guide over on Wowhead. A link for that can be found in the description below. Before we end the video, we'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. We really appreciate all the continued support. Thank you for watching, and we shall see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.